समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा?
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
We know now that Prime Minister Modi and President Trump will not be meeting on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Malaysia. Prime Minister Modi is not physically attending that summit. He will be joining only virtually. Meanwhile, Minister Piyush Goyal has signaled India's red line once again to the Trump presidency, saying that India will not do a deal with a gun held to its head. Piyush Goyal also commented and called out Western hypocrisy, saying that India was being singled out. This as Donald Trump continues to insist that Prime Minister Modi has assured him that by the end of the year, India will be buying, quote unquote, hardly any oil from Russia. Trump has sanctioned 2 Russian oil majors, leading to speculation as to whether this might provide a de facto inadvertent way out for both India and the United States on its impasse on the issue of India's purchase of Russian oil. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. In a few moments from now, we'll be joined by one of India's top strategic minds, Dr. C. Raja Mohan, on what the Modi government might do next. This as Minister Piyush Goyal draws a red line for the Trump presidency, saying India will not cut a deal with a gun held to its head. Trump has placed sanctions on 2 Russian oil firms. This as he leaves for the ASEAN summit in Malaysia, a summit where there was an expectation that Modi might meet Trump. Prime Minister Modi is not attending that meeting in person. All of this is happening as India and America continue to try and hammer out a trade deal. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says India is being singled out on the issue of Russian oil. Trump, meanwhile, is lashing out at Putin, trying to perhaps cut a deal with China, even as it slaps China with tariffs. And while there has been a shift in the language and the discourse and the tone when it comes to Trump and his approach to India, it's simply not clear what will happen next. To try and make sense of it all, let's welcome Professor C. Raja Mohan, one of India's top strategic minds, to the program. Let me start by asking you, are you surprised that Modi is not going to ASEAN, or is it to be expected? Because a lot of homework probably needs to be done. There has to be something tangible before Prime Minister Modi is ready to meet with Trump, even on the sidelines of a multilateral summit. How do you see that decision by the Prime Minister to not attend ASEAN?
I see 2 important factors here. I think one is the Prime Minister's election schedule. I think it all depended on when he would do the campaign for the Bihar elections. Second, I believe President Trump is not spending too much time in Kuala Lumpur. He just goes there for a brief point of time. He's going to have a dinner. He's not even attending the meetings. He'll just have a dinner with the ASEAN leaders and then goes off to Tokyo. So even if you wanted to meet him, I think the windows were very, very limited, and he had a very, very tight schedule. So a lot of times, Barkha, as you know, in the real world, I mean, there's no grand design behind many of these developments. There's always some simple, silly, if you will, reasons that make things happen. So I would say that look, that scheduling was one key issue, and for Prime Minister, the Bihar campaign is important. I would only add one other thing, a speculative thing, that the final deal, the trade deal, was not ready. They're still being negotiated, as your story says. So I think there was no point going when you still don't have the big deal done. So I see these 3 factors as responsible, and nothing really sinister beyond that.
Yeah, I think it's clear that the trade deal is not done, and it became even clearer after listening to Minister Piyush Goyal's very public remarks on how India will not do a deal with a gun held to its head. Now, of course, sometimes sharper positions are taken in public and softer positions are taken in private. Let me play out that statement and I'll come right to you for what you made of those remarks. Let's take a look. This is Minister Piyush Goyal, who's been a key part of these trade negotiations, saying at a roundtable discussion that India will not do a deal with a gun held to its head.
And we are talking to the United States, of course, but we don't do deals in a hurry. And we don't do deals with deadlines or with a gun on our head.
But that's how deals are done these days. It's a deadline.
I don't think so.
Tariffs come in midnight on this date. Take it or leave it.
India looks long term. India never takes decisions in a rush or on the pressure of the moment. And we've accepted if there's a tariff on us, there is a tariff on us. We're looking how to overcome that. We're looking at newer markets. We're looking at a stronger demand impetus within the Indian economy. So we have a very resilient structure, 1.4 billion people. Young.
What did you make of Piyush Goyal? Separately, he also said that India was being singled out. He called out the hypocrisy of Western nations being able to get around the sanctions by Trump on two major Russian oil companies. What did you make of those remarks? And, 2 days ago, when Trump called Prime Minister Modi for Diwali, there was some speculation that things had shifted significantly for the better. Listening to Goyal, you would think that the movement has been quite slow and is still ongoing, still a work in progress. What did you make of those comments?
Because both of us know that covering these events, I think we should not over-determine statements like this when ministers in particular say this. Beyond that, I would say in any trade negotiation, you are talking to two different audiences. One, you're talking to your own people at home, saying that, look, we're not going to make any compromises. We're not going to do it under duress. But at the same time, you are also actively engaged in the negotiation with the other side, actually looking out for potential, shall we say in the Chinese language, win-win solutions, which is exactly what is happening. I think there's nothing new in what Mr. Goyal has said. But the fact is this, when you remember the picture you just showed was on February 13th when Prime Minister was in Washington. In fact, India was among the first countries to start negotiations with the US on the trade issue. But I think when it came to the crunch, I believe in early July, the agreement was ready to be signed. But I think the kind of problem that we've had on the Op Sindoor and what happened to Trump's role, I think Trump was not pleased, obviously, and he said, "Look, I'm not going to sign off on this deal," because the two systems had actually negotiated. That's my assessment, and that Trump was not ready to sign off on it. And we've had this to and fro for nearly a few months, and then we saw a few weeks ago Trump tone it down. What I say, what Mr. Goyal said is very important. But I would say equally important is what the Commerce Secretary said, which is all our papers report, that actually negotiations are going on. We're quite close to a deal, and that the deal, when the bureaucrats finalize the deal, they will be presented to the political leadership. So I'm more optimistic than if you look at the two statements together, what Goyal said and what Secretary Commerce said. So I think we have to take both in conjunction rather than take them out of context. So,
because sometimes solutions are birthed inadvertently or circumstantially in the conflicts between nations. Earlier, there was the sense that if Trump brought home a Russia-Ukraine sort of deal, then the so-called penalty on India for purchasing Russian oil would have to go out of the window. Now, with Trump's decision to sanction two major Russian oil firms, there is this speculation that perhaps this in itself would provide the solution. Because, for example, if India is not able to purchase oil from these companies, then why would we be penalized for buying Russian oil?
Look, I think the government has said repeatedly that, look, it was unfair, discriminatory, all that is true. But then life is unfair. I mean, I think to say in the real world, it's not, people don't go by moral politic. And I think Trump was trying to use pressure on India to force Russia to do things. But now I think because that didn't work, now they're going directly to Russia and putting some pressure on it. Look, I think for India, I would say that why did India buy from, so much of Russian oil? Moving from 2% of consumption in February 2022 to almost 35-40% in the last few months. I think because the oil was cheap, it was discounted because nobody else, they could not sell it to the others. And because of the price cap that the Americans had put, you had to sell it below a price. So it suited India, Indian refiners and the government of India, that it could actually reduce the cost of the oil bill, because don't forget, India is 90% of oil is imported. So the price of oil makes a big difference to India's fiscal situation. So that was the situation under which we bought. Now, what's happening even before the latest sanctions came, I think the pressure of the other sanctions already in place was beginning to affect. And the discounted price was not very much higher than the market spot prices elsewhere. So I think it was inevitable that the specific advantage that the Russian oil had for India, that was beginning to diminish because of the way the oil market, overall pricing of the oil market was. So I think India is simply adapting to it. Look, I think, you can frame this as, look, is India walking back, India sovereignty, blah, blah, blah. You can say all that. But the fact is, look, India loves Russia. It wants to keep that relationship. But it's not suicidal, right? I mean, you're not telling your oil companies get entangled with American financial sanctions. And with the prices, no big difference in terms of what we get. India is doing what's in its interest. And I think which is what the government has said. But I think the problem is in our political discourse now, we can easily turn this into a big football, because I would say it was expected, as the relative advantage of Russian oil was diminishing, it was a matter of time before India did. And as you rightly said, and if the sanctions are there, why would India want to buy?
Well, that is my conspiracy theory, that with these sanctions, actually, India gets an exit route without looking or having to surrender.
Look, there was never a surrender, right? I mean, look, I think
surrender in quotes. No, let me reframe that. Let me reframe the question. In both America and India, domestic politics are playing their own role in foreign policy, as always happens. Now, in Trump's case, there's a sort of far-right element to his base. There's a strong anti-Indian American sentiment, anti-immigrant sentiment, and Indian Americans, even H-1B visa holders, are facing that today. There's also the challenges of the American economy and jobs, so on, etc. In the context of Prime Minister Modi in India, there's an election upcoming. Modi has taken the position, India has taken the position, Piyush Goyal just took the position that India will not do anything with a gun held to its head. After that, if you're going to reverse your decision on purchasing Russian oil or walk back from it or tone it down or taper it down, do you need to have a narrative to sell to the people at home? That's my question.
No, I think here again, I think the government statements have been very, very clear ever since the pressure on the Russian issue started. They say, look, these are decisions made by our companies on the basis of market situation. So the government always had distanced itself and kept saying, look, this is what our companies do. They're saying whatever is beneficial, they buy. I mean, that was a nice carve out. But I think the government has always kept itself a door open. But I think the way our discourse goes on in this, overextended, over-stylized terms, it can easily be misrepresented. But I think it was quite clear from the beginning. They had a bit of room for maneuver. And once the prices came down, it was a matter of time we're going to do it. So I don't think we should take every decision. Many of the things you said were right. What's happening on H-1B, what's happening anti-India sentiment. But oil issue is on its own. Look, you don't need to connect all this. The oil issue was on its own. Trump was using India's oil purchases as a point of pressure on Russia. So that's a consistent argument. And I think over the last few weeks, Trump is beginning to change his position. He's going to put directly pressure on Russia now. At the same time, he's also saying, I don't know if you saw Trump's statement a few days ago when he said India is beginning to cut down. He says, in future, they can buy. I'm just doing this to get Russians to a ceasefire. And if Russia, is nice to, me and gives me a victory in Ukraine, you can go back to buying. So he's also being very tactical, So I think given our daily, I know you have to do this every day, to take out daily thing, I think we should easy to miss the larger thread that is running here. So I think India always had room, and I think we played it well so far. And my sense is if we get the deal done, the situation, I think, look, in the end, this is about the apparel producers in Tirupur or the people in Surat, Andhra farmers. It's not a Delhi elite ego with the Americans, and I think the economic interests are very primordial here. the number of people who get affected by it are really too many.
No, I take that point that, this can't be made into a drawing room sort of debate, and it does impact real lives in a very significant way. If we zoom out from this sort of daily Trump beat, because that's what it's become, Trump has become a sort of news beat by itself. There are other things happening that may or may not be connected. I think you would know better than me that most things in the end are often connected. India's reset with the Taliban, the rising tensions between Afghanistan and Pakistan, Afghanistan's decision to almost echo a kind of Indus Water Treaty approach and now talk about cutting off water to Pakistan, the TTP's open dare to Asim Munir, right? How do you look at all of this in the context of the larger geopolitical churn? I think you've also written about how, there are now new countries with a place on the world stage. Qatar, for example, has played a role in mediating between Pakistan and Afghanistan. The Saudis have tried to, have their own pact with Pakistan. There's Turkey. There are all of these. There's the emergence of these sort of new entities who are jousting, asserting, influencing. So talk a little bit about all of this.
I think the Taliban issue, I think if somebody wanted to argue that Delhi has surrendered to the Taliban, there was a very good argument there. You remember, 10 years ago, the entire media used to say there's no such thing as a good Taliban. This is what the MEA used to say. Therefore, the whole media used to say. How come we are friends with the Taliban? So I think that is more interesting, I would say, because again, if you look at the deep structure, whoever ruled Kabul had problems with Rawalpindi and had goodwill for India. Irrespective, even Taliban, which was hostile to India at one point of time, that the structural contradictions between Taliban and the Pakistan army are deep. Yeah. And Taliban wants to be independent. Any ruler in Kabul wants to be independent. And they see India giving them some space to manage their relationship with Pakistan. And I think this has played out with every single government in Kabul since 1947. And I think that's what is playing out. So my sense is Taliban is looking for space. India is a natural partner for whoever is sitting in Kabul. So I think India has moved slowly, like we don't do anything in a hurry. First, there was a technical mission, then you had Joint Secretary going there, then you had Vikram Misri meeting them, and finally, you have the minister coming here. So I think it is, given the contradictions that Pakistan has with India and the Taliban both today, there is a new convergence, and we're beginning to see that. On the other areas, I would say, look, the rise of the new actors is a reality. And there are going to be a lot more players. Remember, there was a time when we used to say, look, nobody should come into South Asia. But today, Turkey is a player in Maldives. It's a player in Afghanistan and Pakistan, including in Bangladesh. They're beginning to sell arms. They used to sell arms to us as well. You have actually Saudi Arabia. UAE always had a role in the region. Now you have Qatar active. But that doesn't mean all these guys need to be opposed to us. So I think what is happening is South Asia is being truly globalized. There are a lot of external players. And we have over the years, some of the best friends of Pakistan have also become our friends. UAE, for example, Saudis, for example, Americans, for that matter. Barring China and Turkey to some extent, we have managed to win over a lot of friends. That doesn't mean they abandon Pakistan. So I would say overall, we are in a good place in the region by improving our own relationship with the middle powers. I think we need to do that a lot more in the coming years.
I want to end by talking about what is perceived to be a Trump tilt to Pakistan. Also, this Trump's renewed interest in controlling the Bagram Basin, which actually India, Russia, China, Pakistan, Taliban are all, at least theoretically, on the same side. Do you believe that since the tone and tenor of Trump's words towards India has softened a bit, there is less reason to be concerned about this tilt that seemed quite distinct towards Pakistan in the interim? At the signing of the Gaza Peace Pact, Trump did not give the podium to Keir Starmer. UK is one of America's closest allies, but he did call upon Shehbaz Sharif to speak. He literally prompted Shehbaz Sharif to repeat sort of the fact that Trump deserved a Nobel and so on. Do you see it as a tilt, or do you not see it as a tilt?
Look, I don't think we should be rattled by everything that other countries do with Pakistan. I think there is a problem here. I think Pakistan gets our goat. That's so natural that we keep whatever Pakistan does, we get. upset. But the fact is, look, 250 million people with nuclear weapons. The idea that nobody in the world would do anything with them, I think is an illusion. I don't think we need to have that. Second, I would say, compared to where we were before, today Indian economy is 10 times bigger than Pakistan. 10 times. Pakistan is stuck at around $400 billion GDP. India is at 4 trillion. Pakistan is under the 24th IMF program. The economic crisis domestically is a serious one. So I think the overall economic balance is a lot more in India's favor compared to the history. And finally, I would say, Barkha, I mean, you covered Musharraf. Now, you compare how Musharraf was being treated around the world as some kind of he was a gendarme against the Great War on Terror. He was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Compared to, you were too young to have covered Ziaul Haq, but which I had a sense that Ziaul Haq, I mean, after Russian invasion of Afghanistan, he was so important. He got billions and billions of dollars from the Americans. And then if you go back even further, I mean, I was too young to cover it, Ayub Khan, in the 1950s. So compared to Ayub Khan, General Ziaul Haq or General Musharraf, Field Marshal Asim Munni doesn't have the same clout because Pakistan is not so important. They might have been clever in cutting some diplomatic deals with Pakistan, with Americans. There could be some deal on crypto. There could be some, dirt to sell to the Americans. All that is fine. But I think none of this alters the structural reality, which is India is bigger. The overall relationship that India has with the US is deep. We have $200 billion of trade. So I think we should not get rattled every time others do something with Pakistan. The trick for us is really how do we turn the gap that exists today between India and Pakistan into greater strategic advantage? How do you, modernize your military faster so that in a next encounter like Op Sindoor, your victory will be decisive and be seen as decisive? Those are the things, rather than worry about what is Turkey doing with Pakistan today, what are Americans saying about Pakistan today.
Finally, if you were to be looking out for some signposts between India and America, would you say that the relationship is on the mend, or would you say it's too early to say that right now?
Look, I think for 20 years, I mean, I would say when Bill Clinton came to India, you remember 2000 March, since then, it has been on a consistent upward trajectory. We had Clinton administration, the last year of Clinton, then we had 8 years of George W. Bush, then we had 8 years of Barack Obama, then 4 years of Trump and 4 years of Biden. Through this period, if you remember where we were in 2000 and where we are today, it's a very, very different relationship. And the problem is, I don't think that 25 years of investment by both sides in this relationship is going to be junked overnight. And my sense is we've had problems because Trump 2 is not Trump 1. He's become a lot more maverick. And because of domestic politics, he's focused on the trade issue. He has claims, I mean, I don't want to say pretends. I mean, I think he really maybe believes that he's going to be a God-sent peacemaker in the world. So he thinks wherever there's an opportunity, he's claiming to be a role. All those are realities. So in a way, this is a disruption in our relationship. And this has to be managed because the stakes, as I said, look, $200 billion worth of trade, expansive defense cooperation today, 5 million Indians in the United States. So I think the government has done reasonably well to manage this relationship, strategic patience, continue to negotiate, don't get into this tutu-mai-mai on a daily basis with them. But that's exactly what the public discourse of the media, we've seen that. But I think the things will work themselves out. I mean, I think we got to be confident, we got to be optimistic, given the structural convergences that exist on trade, on Asian balance. I would say we should be confident and hopeful. But the coming 3 days, I think there's going to be a lot more news, not about India, but I think what Trump is going to do in Asia, in Kuala Lumpur with ASEAN, Japan with the new prime minister. He's going to have a meeting with Xi Jinping in South Korea. So I think we are entering a dynamic phase in our region, in Asia. And I think how that plays out, we don't have control over it, but how that plays out is going to be very, very important for us. And what we need to do is, depending on what comes out in all these meetings, we need to be flexible enough to adapt and adjust. And my sense is we are big enough, we are large enough to make those adjustments.
Absolutely. And the next few days, as you said, are going to be very significant. In particular, that meeting between Xi Jinping and Trump, I think could, depending on what happens there, could reset many traditional assumptions and agility will be sort of the buzzword of our time, at least as far as Trump is in the White House, which is at least another 3 years. Thank you so much, Professor Raja Mohan. Always learned so much from you. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Take care.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.